The night everything broke started with rain. Heavy rain fell on the tin roof of their small house in Ibadan, loud and angry, like it already knew what was coming. 16-year-old Kofi Adewale sat quietly on the floor, fixing his torn school bag with a needle and thread. He was the kind of boy who never talked back, never caused trouble, and always did what he was told. People often forgot he was even there. That evening, his father came home later than usual. His clothes were wet, his face tight with anger. Tund, Kofi's older brother, stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes calm. Kofi didn't know that a lie had already been told. Dangerous one. Tund had whispered words about stolen money and disrespect, twisting small moments into something ugly. Before Kofi could even stand up, his father's voice exploded. He didn't ask questions. He didn't listen. He didn't look at Kofi's face. He only heard the lie and chose to believe it. The first slap came so fast it knocked Kofi to the ground. The second came with shouting. Words like useless and shame filled the room, louder than the rain outside. Kofi tried to speak. His mouth opened but no sound came out. His mother stood in the corner, silent, her hands shaking, too afraid to stop it. Tund watched without saying a word. Minutes later, the door was thrown open. The rain rushed in. Kofi was pushed outside with nothing but his thin shirt and bruises on his skin. The door slammed shut behind him. In that moment, standing alone in the rain, Kofi understood something terrible. That night, he didn't just lose his home. He lost the boy he used to be. Looking back, the signs were always there. Even before the lies, before the rain and the broken night, life inside the Adewale home had never been fair. It was a house where one sun shined loudly, and the other lived quietly in the shadows. Tund was the firstborn, tall, confident, and always speaking with pride. From the day he was young, he was praised for everything he did. If he passed an exam, his father told the neighbors. If he failed, excuses were made for him. He is just tired, their father would say. He will do better next time. Tund was protected, even when he was wrong. Kofi was different. He was quiet, careful, and hardworking. He woke up early to fetch water, swept the compound without being asked, and finished his homework by lantern light when electricity failed. No one told him, "Well done." His efforts were expected, not celebrated. When he spoke, people rarely listened. When he stayed silent, no one noticed. At school, things slowly began to change. Kofi's teachers started calling him aside after class. They praised his handwriting, his math skills, and the way he helped other students understand lessons. One teacher even told him, "You have a bright future if you keep working like this." Those words stayed with Kofi. For the first time someone saw him. But those same words planted a seed of jealousy in Tund's heart. Tund had always believed he would be the successful one, the family's pride, the son everyone depended on. When teachers began mentioning Kofi's name at school meetings, Tund felt something burn inside him. He laughed it off at first, calling Kofi teacher's pet. But inside, fear was growing. Fear that the quiet brother might one day stand taller than him. Home, the change was clear. Tund started watching Kofi closely. If Kofi studied late, Tund mocked him. If Kofi received a good report, Tund found a way to spoil the moment. He would make jokes, twist small mistakes, or whisper things to their father. Slowly, carefully, like someone building a trap. Their father never questioned Tund's words. He trusted his firstborn without doubt. Kofi noticed this and learned to stay even quieter. He stopped sharing school news. He kept his dreams to himself. Still, his effort did not stop. He believed hard work would speak for him one day. But jealousy is patient. Wait. Tund felt his position slipping, and instead of working harder, he chose an easier path. He chose to destroy what he feared. By the time the lie was told, the house was already divided. One brother stood tall, protected by love and trust. The other stood small, holding on to hope that would soon be crushed. And Kofi, without knowing it, was already walking toward the night that would change his life forever. The lie was small when it was first spoken, but it carried the power to destroy everything. Tund chose his words carefully, the way people do when they want to sound honest. He told their father that money was missing. He said Kofi had been acting too proud lately, answering back, forgetting his place. He mixed truth with lies until they sounded real. Their father did not ask where the money was last kept. He did not ask when it went missing. He did not call Kofi to explain. In his mind, the story already made sense. The quiet son had become suspicious. The obedient boy had suddenly changed. Anger rose fast, fed by pride and disappointment. When Kofi was called into the room, he felt it immediately. The air was heavy. His father's eyes were hard, not the eyes of a man looking for truth, but of a man ready to punish. Kofi stood there, confused, his hands shaking. He tried to explain that he had taken nothing, that he had shown no disrespect. His voice was soft, almost breaking. The first slap cut through the room like thunder. Kofi fell to his knees, shocked more than hurt. He looked up, hoping someone would stop it, hoping his mother would speak. She stood near the wall, tears filling her eyes, but fear kept her silent. She had learned long ago that speaking up only made things worse. The second slap came harder, then another. Each one carried words that hurt more than the pain. Thief, ungrateful, shame to this house. Kofi tried to cover his face, tried to explain again, but no one listened. His father's anger had taken control. What started as punishment became release. Tun stood nearby, quiet and safe. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look guilty. He only watched, knowing his place was secure. When it was over, Kofi could barely stand. His ears rang. His body ached. His heart felt empty. His father grabbed him by the arm and dragged him toward the door. Outside, the rain had started again, heavy and cold. The night was dark, and the street was silent. "Leave," his father said. "You are no son of mine." The door slammed shut with final force. No blanket, no shoes, no chance to speak. Just rain, pain, and disbelief. Kofi stood there for a moment, staring at the door that once meant safety. He knocked once, softly. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Still nothing. That was when the truth became clear. A lie had been believed. A home had chosen silence over truth. And a 16-year-old boy had been erased in a single night. The rain followed Kofi as he walked away from the house. Each step felt heavy, like his legs no longer belonged to him. His face burned where his father's hands had struck him, and his chest hurt every time he breathed. The streets of Ibadan were almost empty at that hour. Only puddles, shadows, and the sound of water hitting the ground. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew he couldn't go back. The cold wind cut through his thin shirt, making his body shake. Hunger twisted his stomach, sharp and sudden, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since morning. Every noise made him jump. Barking dog, passing motorcycle, laughter far away that didn't belong to him. As he walked, memories came without asking. The mornings he swept the compound, the nights he studied by candlelight, the hope he once had that good behavior would protect him. With every step, that hope felt smaller. Kofi passed shops with metal doors pulled down tight. Their signs creaked in the wind. He stopped near one, too tired to keep moving. His head spun and his knees felt weak. He sat down slowly, leaning against the cold metal shutter. The ground was wet, but he didn't care anymore. He pulled his arms around himself, trying to keep what little warmth he had. Time moved strangely. Minutes felt like hours. The rain slowed, then started again. His clothes clung to his skin. He wiped his face and felt dried blood near his lip. That was when the tears came, quiet and heavy. Not loud crying, just the kind that hurts deep inside. He cried for the home he lost, for the mother who stayed silent, for the brother who watched him fall. A man walked past and looked at him, then looked away. Another slowed down, then kept moving. Kofi realized something painful in that moment. On the street, suffering is common. People learn not to see it. When the night grew colder, Kofi lay down beside the shop, curling his body to fight the wind. The hard ground pressed against his bones. He closed his eyes, but sleep would not come easily. Every time he drifted off, fear pulled him back. Fear of thieves. Fear of police. Fear of never waking up. As the hours passed, something inside him changed. He stopped waiting for someone to come save him. He stopped believing the door behind him would open. He understood that no one was coming. That night, lying on cold concrete, Kofi realized his childhood had ended. Not slowly, not gently. It ended all at once in the rain, outside a locked shop. He was no longer a boy waiting for protection. He was alone now, and the world was not kind to those who had nowhere to belong. The morning came without comfort. Kofi woke up stiff and sore, his body aching from the cold ground and the bruises that had darkened overnight. For a few seconds he forgot where he was. Then he opened his eyes and saw the closed shop, the empty street, and the truth returned. He had no home, no family to go back to. The first days were the hardest. He walked from street to street, asking questions in a low voice. Where could he sleep? Where could he find work? Some people ignored him. Some chased him away. A few pointed him toward shelters where boys like him stayed. The shelters were crowded and noisy, but they were better than the street. There, he learned the first rule of surviving alone. You take help when it comes, even if it's not perfect. Food did not come easily. Kofi washed cars at roadside junctions, bending low with a bucket and rag under the hot sun. Sometimes drivers paid him. Sometimes they shouted at him and drove away. On other days, he carried heavy loads in the market, sacks that pressed into his shoulders and made his arms shake. The money was small, but it meant one meal, maybe two. School became a memory he carried in his heart. His uniform was gone. His books were wet and torn. Each morning when he saw students walking past with clean clothes and bags on their backs, something twisted inside him. He wanted to join them, to sit in a classroom again, to be called by his name. But survival came first. Hunger does not wait for dreams. At night, Kofi returned to wherever he could find space. Sometimes it was a shelter, sometimes a church veranda, sometimes the open street. He learned to sleep lightly, listening even in his dreams. He learned which areas were safe and which were not. He learned to protect the little money he earned as if it were gold. There were moments when he almost gave up, when his body was too tired to move, when his heart felt too heavy to carry. But something inside him refused to die. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was anger, or maybe it was the small voice that remembered a teacher once saying he had potential. Weeks turned into months. Kofi grew thinner, tougher, quieter. His hands became rough. His eyes changed. He stopped expecting kindness, but he learned to respect it when it appeared. Shared meal, kind word, place to rest for one night. Living without a family taught Kofi lessons no classroom ever could. He learned that the world can be cruel, but it also rewards effort. He learned that survival is not about strength alone but patience. And most of all, he learned that even when everything is taken from you, the will to keep going can still belong to you. Kofi met Mr. Jabari Okonkwo on a hot afternoon when his body felt too tired to keep pretending he was strong. He had been washing cars since morning, his hands shaking as he squeezed the wet cloth again and again. When he finished the last car, his head spun and he sat down by the roadside, hungry and dizzy. That was when a deep voice spoke. "Boy, you work like someone running from something." Kofi looked up and saw an older man standing near a small mechanic workshop. His hands were black with oil, his face calm but sharp, like someone who had seen enough life to stop being surprised by it. Mr. Jabari did not smile, but his eyes were not cruel either. He handed Kofi a plate of food. No questions, no long talk, just food. Kofi hesitated, then took it with shaking hands. He ate slowly, carefully, as if the meal might disappear if he rushed. Mr. Jabari watched quietly, not with pity, but with understanding. After Kofi finished, the man asked simple questions. "Where do you sleep? Do you have parents?" Kofi answered honestly, his voice low. He expected judgment. Instead, Mr. Jabari nodded as if he had heard similar stories before. "I also slept on the street once," he said. "Life knocked me down early too." From that day, Mr. Jabari allowed Kofi to stay near the workshop. At first, he only swept floors and handed over tools. The work was strict. Mistakes were corrected. Laziness was not allowed. But for the first time in months, Kofi felt safe while working. Slowly, Mr. Jabari began teaching him how engines worked, how to listen to sounds, how to use tools properly, how to be patient with broken things. Machines are like people, he said once. If you rush them, you break them more. More than skills, Mr. Jabari taught discipline. Wake up early, keep your space clean, respect yourself even when no one is watching. He never raised his voice, but his silence carried weight. Kofi listened carefully. He wanted to do everything right. One evening, after closing the shop, Mr. Jabari looked at Kofi and said something that stayed in his heart forever. You are not useless. Someone lied to you. Don't believe them. No one had ever said that to him before. For the first time since the night he was thrown out, Kofi felt seen. Not as a problem, not as a burden, but as a boy with value. Someone believed in him without demanding proof. That belief changed everything. It gave Kofi strength his body did not have. It gave him hope when nights were still hard. And it showed him that family does not always come from blood. Sometimes it comes from a stranger who sees your pain and chooses to help you stand. Life began to move in a new rhythm for Kofi. The days were no longer just about surviving. They became about learning, growing, and proving something to himself. In the morning, he worked at the mechanic shop with Mr. Jabari. His hands were always dirty with oil, his arms tired from lifting parts and pushing broken vehicles. But he did the work with care, listening closely, asking questions, and remembering every lesson. During the day, he learned how to repair engines, fix brakes, and understand problems just by listening to a sound. Mr. Jabari was strict but fair. When Kofi made mistakes, he corrected him without insults. When he did well, he nodded quietly. Those small signs of approval meant more to Kofi than loud praise ever could. At night, when the workshop was closed and the streets grew quiet, Kofi returned to studying. He borrowed old textbooks, some missing pages, some marked with other people's notes. Under a dim light, he read slowly, fighting sleep. There were nights his eyes burned and his head dropped onto the book. Still he pushed himself. Education was the dream that had been stolen from him once. He refused to let it die again. Money came little by little. Mr. Jabari paid him honestly, and Kofi saved carefully. He learned to separate what he needed from what he wanted. Food first, transport second. The rest, no matter how small, he hid away. Each saved note felt like proof that his life was moving forward. The anger inside him did not disappear overnight. Some nights, memories returned without warning. His father's face. His brother's silence. The door slamming shut. His chest would tighten and his hands would shake. But instead of letting anger destroy him, Kofi began to use it. He turned it into fuel. Every painful memory pushed him to work harder, study longer, and stay focused. Slowly, people began to notice the change. Customers at the shop trusted him. They asked for him by name. Other workers respected him. He stood taller now, not because life was easy, but because he had learned to carry its weight. Kofi also learned something deeper. Pain can either break you or shape you. He chose to let it shape him. He stopped asking why this happened and started asking what he could become. By turning pain into purpose, Kofi built more than skills or savings. He built confidence. He built discipline. And most of all, he built a future that no one could take away from him again. Years passed quietly, the way deep changes often do. There was no single day when Kofi woke up and felt successful. No loud celebration. No sudden miracle. Life simply kept moving forward, one hard decision at a time, until one day, he looked around and realized how far he had come. In Abeokuta, people knew him as Mr. Adewale. Some called him chairman with respect. Others simply said, "Go and ask Kofi, he will handle it." His transport business had grown slowly from one used vehicle into a small fleet of buses and delivery vans. They were not flashy, but they were reliable. And in that business, reliability meant everything. Kofi woke up before dawn every day. Not because he had to, but because discipline had become part of him. He checked schedules, spoke to drivers, reviewed fuel costs, and handled problems calmly. When a vehicle broke down, he didn't shout. He understood machines. When a driver made a mistake, he corrected him firmly but fairly. People respected him because he never cheated, never delayed payments, and never looked down on anyone. Most of the people who worked for him did not know his story. They didn't know that this respected businessman once slept beside a closed shop with nothing but bruises and fear. They didn't know that he once washed cars just to eat. Kofi kept that part of his life locked deep inside, not because he was ashamed but because it was personal. That pain belonged to him. Sometimes when business meetings ended and the office grew quiet, Kofi would sit alone and remember. He remembered the smell of oil in Mr. Jabari's workshop, the nights he studied with tired eyes, the hunger that taught him discipline. Those memories grounded him. They reminded him not to waste what he had built. In Abeokuta, his name carried weight. Bank managers listened when he spoke. Local suppliers trusted him without hesitation. Community leaders invited him to meetings. Yet Kofi remained simple. He dressed neatly but modestly. He spoke softly. He never bragged about his success. People noticed that too. What many admired most was how he treated young boys who came looking for work. Kofi always gave them a chance. He watched how they worked, how they spoke, how they handled responsibility. If he saw honesty and effort, he helped them. Some became drivers. Some learned repairs. Some simply needed guidance. Kofi never said why he cared so much. He didn't need to. At night, when the city settled and the noise faded, Kofi sometimes stood by his window and looked out at the quiet streets. He thought about Ibadan, about a house where his name was no longer spoken, about a father who chose anger over truth, about a brother who chose jealousy over love. Those thoughts no longer burned like before. They were distant like old scars. His past stayed hidden, not erased. It lived in his habits, his patience, his refusal to abuse power. It lived in the way he listened more than he spoke, in the way he never forgot how quickly life can change. Kofi Adewale was no longer the quiet boy who waited to be seen. He had become a man who built his own place in the world. And though no one knew the full journey behind his success, every step of it was written in the strength he carried, calmly and without regret. The call came on an ordinary afternoon, the kind Kofi usually spent checking routes and answering drivers. A distant relative spoke his name carefully, as if unsure he would even respond. There was trouble at home. Serious trouble. Their father was ill, and the family needed help. Kofi listened without interrupting, his face calm, his hand steady on the phone. When the call ended, he sat quietly for a long time. He had avoided that house for years. Not because he was afraid, but because reopening old wounds felt unnecessary. Still, something told him this was different, so he went back. The reunion did not happen in a warm living room. It happened in tension. Whispers followed him as he entered. People stared, surprised by the man he had become. They expected a broken boy. They met a calm stranger instead. The crisis unfolded quickly. Money was missing. Documents didn't add up. Under pressure, Tun's past began to unravel. This time there were records. Witnesses. Clear proof. The same brother who once accused Kofi was now exposed for stealing from the family over many years. When the truth came out, it did not arrive with shouting. It arrived with silence. Tun tried to speak, but his words collapsed under their own weight. Excuses sounded weak. Lies had no place to hide. One by one, relatives turned away from him. The room grew quiet, heavy, uncomfortable. Their father sat down slowly, as if the strength had left his body. His hands trembled. His eyes moved to Kofi and stayed there. For the first time he really looked at him. Not as a disappointment, not as a problem, but as the son he had wronged. No one spoke. There was no anger in the room. A shame. Kofi felt many things at once, but rage was not one of them. He remembered the rain, the bruises, closed door. Yet standing there he felt distant from that pain. He had carried it long enough. Their father finally spoke, his voice breaking. He tried to apologize, but the words came out broken and small. Tears filled his eyes. He bowed his head, unable to meet Kofi's gaze. Kofi did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He simply stood there, calm and steady. His silence said more than shouting ever could. In that moment, the truth did not heal everything, did not erase the past, But it changed something forever. The lie that destroyed a home had finally been exposed. And the silence that followed was heavier than any anger, because everyone knew it had come too late. The room stayed quiet long after the truth came out. Kofi stood there while his father struggled to breathe through the weight of regret. The strong man who once ruled the house now looked small, broken by his own mistakes. Slowly, his father stepped forward, his voice shaking, his pride finally gone. "I was wrong," he said. "Please forgive me." Kofi listened without interrupting. He didn't rush to answer. He had waited years to be heard, and now he understood that some words lose their power when they arrive too late. He looked at his father's face and saw pain, not strength. But pain alone could not change the past. Kofi remembered the night he was thrown out. The rain, the cold, the locked door. He remembered learning to survive without love, without protection, without family. Those memories had shaped him. They taught him discipline, patience, and self-respect. They also taught him something important. Not everyone deserves a second chance in your life, even if you forgive them in your heart. "I don't hate you," Kofi said quietly. "But I learned how to live without you." There was no anger in his voice. No desire to punish. Revenge no longer interested him. Success had already spoken for him. Peace mattered more than apology. Kofi helped where he could. He made sure his father was cared for. He showed respect without reopening old wounds. Then, when it was time to leave, he stood up, thanked everyone, and walked away calmly. No shouting followed him. No dramatic goodbye, just quiet understanding. Outside, the air felt lighter. Kofi took a deep breath and walked forward, not looking back. He knew who he was now. He knew what he had survived. And he knew he did not need to return to prove anything. "He threw me out like I was nothing. I survived like I was everything. And that's why I never begged to return."